All right, good afternoon, Azure Dev Summit. How you all going? Good? Enjoying the conference so far? Yeah? It looks great. I love this venue. I love these little inflatable domes we have here. It's great. Having maybe a little bit of a 3 p.m. dip, maybe, though. It's a bit of a interesting kind of time. But don't worry, this session will reinvigorate you a little bit. We are not going hard on the technical details at all. The focus of this session is actually on storytelling and experience. So I do promise that I will take really good care of you, and hopefully I can inspire you a little bit. So my name's Adele Carpenter. I'm a software engineer at Trifork Amsterdam, where I work on projects for the educational sector. I'm also a competitive powerlifter. Now, who here has maybe a painful memory or two from gym class when they were at school? Yeah, a couple of hands. Okay, and if you don't want to out yourself, that's totally fine. But I will happily out myself. So I have a collection of painful memories from gym class because the fact is I've been a little bit nerdy and a little bit overweight and a lot uncoordinated my entire life. I was almost always picked last for team sports, and the ball was never thrown to me because, to quote my schoolmates directly, Adele sucks. But little did anyone know, especially me, that 30 years later, I'd not only be participating in sports, but I'd also be competing and kind of not sucking. So who here has heard of powerlifting before? Wow, all of you. Okay, cool. So I didn't expect the whole room to be full, but that's cool. So that's really good considering it is a niche sport, but I will just take a minute to explain it briefly, just so that we are all on the same page. So powerlifting is a strength sport where the lifters try to lift the maximum that they can for 1 repetition in 3 lifts: squat, bench press, and deadlift. And let's just have a demo of these lifts from the strongest women on the planet. Who better? So Carlina Tongatea here is going to demo the squat for us. You put the bar on your back and you squat down until your hip crease is below the top of the knee. So let's watch it now. So she goes down and then up 1 time. Carlina is from New Zealand. She's the current world champion in the 76 kilo weight class. That is my weight class. And she just squatted 231 kilos for the world record. Now, in the bench press, you lower the bar to a dead stop on your chest before extending your arms to return the bar to the starting position. Now, this is Agata Shitko. She holds the bench press world record in 3 weight classes. Here she is in the 69 kilo class, and that's 158 kilos on the bar. Now, in the deadlift, you simply pick up as much weight as you can off the floor, bend down, grab the bar, use your legs and your butt to return to the standing position. This is Heather Connor. She's in the 47 kilo weight class, deadlifting 212.5 kilos, which is 4.5 times her body weight. Look at her go. It's not exactly a pretty lift, but it's a legal lift. And that also got her the world title. Now, the deadlift has 2 main styles. You just saw Heather here do the sumo style, where the hands are inside the legs. This is Carlina again, lifting the conventional style. You can see her setting up with her hands outside the legs, and that's 255 kilos on the bar. So 3 absolutely phenomenal women here. I don't know about you, but I can't help but get a few tingles every time I watch them lift. It's absolutely incredible. Now, this is me at a recent powerlifting competition. I am certainly not a world champion, but it does not matter. I'm setting up for my 3rd attempt squat, and that is 135 kilos on the bar. And I ended up failing that lift, and I have the spotter behind me to thank for saving my life, this man here. So how did I get here? Well, this was me in 2021. Now, don't worry, this isn't a weight loss story. You haven't entered the wrong session. This is a session about how powerlifting made me a better software engineer. But it is a story where weight loss is just the beginning. So due to a variety of reasons, like genetics, mental health problems, societal conditioning, a love of food, a love of being indoors, I've just always struggled with my weight. But in 2021, I was the heaviest that I had ever been, to the point where I was starting to waddle. And sure, we were all suffering through the pandemic, and I wasn't the only one carrying a few extra COVID kilos. But 105 kilos on my 163 centimetre frame was just too much, and it was impacting my quality of life. Something really had to change. So I did something that smart people don't do often enough, and I hired an expert. And I started with an online tailored program. And quite frankly, I was shocked at their advice. Calorie counting, no cardio. I was skeptical, but clearly what I was doing wasn't working. So I committed. I handed myself over to the plan and the coach. And I learned that weight loss is actually quite simple in principle. You eat in a calorie deficit and you do strength training. Now, strength training is often overlooked, but it is very important because strength training, I think a big chunk of us here know, tells your body, hey, while you're trying to make up this energy deficit, please take it from my fat, not my muscles, please, because I actually really need my muscles. And you do need your muscles. But 2 months in, I was hooked. Like, the fat loss was great, and I enjoyed seeing my body slim down. But what I loved the most was how strength training made me feel. Every week, I was lifting more and more weight, and I wanted to chase that feeling forever. So I went up to one of the personal trainers at the gym, and I said, I want to get as strong as possible. Actually, my exact words were, I want to get as strong as shit. To this day, my coach and I still laugh about that, but that's what we did. We focused on making me as strong as shit. And the first thing I learned is that strength is specific. It's a skill. So the natural follow-up question is, strong as shit in what? And we went for the big 3, squat, bench press, deadlift. And I didn't know this at the time, but those 3 gym bro lifts, as we just saw, are the sport of powerlifting. And just over a year after this picture was taken, I did my first unofficial powerlifting competition. Now, we call it a mock meet. I weighed in at 82.5 kilos, so over 20 kilo weight loss. It was scary. I didn't know anyone, and I looked out of place, and everyone had belts and knee sleeves and fancy shoes and chalk, and was that baby powder? But my gosh, were they enthusiastic and friendly, and they were just so happy to have someone new experiencing something that they were all clearly so passionate about. So in that meet, I got an 80 kilo squat, a 50 kilo bench, and a 110 kilo deadlift. These lifts here, which I'll just play for you now. So these lifts yielded me a total of 240 kilos, and that's how the sport of powerlifting works. You get 3 attempts at each lift, and your best number of each lift are added together to give you your total. That was a PR for deadlift. I was very happy. It gives you your final score. I've competed 5 more times since that first meet in 2022, and I've increased my total by over 50% to 365 kilos. Earlier this year, I qualified for the Dutch Bench Press Nationals, where I'll be competing in December, and I even have my sights set on the European Masters Championships in 2027. So Masters is 40 plus. But participating in sport is not about the competitions and the achievements. It's about showing up consistently, even when I don't want to. Like the same way that I'm expected to show up in my work. I spend about 8 to 10 hours a week in the gym, and I do that alongside my day job as a software engineer and my hobby job as a tech conference speaker. And spending this much time in the gym has not only brought it significant physical changes, which, let's face it, I'm not mad about, but more importantly, spending this much time working towards a goal that's important to me has made me a much better engineer and a much more confident speaker. So in this talk, I'm going to break down my key insights for you. So you'll get all the brain gains without having to touch a single piece of heavy metal, although I would highly recommend it, of course. So first up is that powerlifting is an individual sport. When you're on the platform, it's just you and the bar. It's your hundreds of hours and your thousands of reps that you did yourself that all come together in that moment. Except it's not. If you want to get anywhere in powerlifting, you need support and guidance. And you need to learn to ask for it, not just from your coach, but from your gym buddies, your friends, your family, your colleagues. Because there are times when you feel like your lifts are plateauing no matter what you do, and you cannot seem to get stronger. You need your coach to build faith in yourself and in the plan. There are times when you're preparing for a competition, so an all-nighter at the bar is probably not the wisest choice. You need your friends to support you in not drinking and in leaving the party early. There are times when you feel like an imposter, that you're not strong enough or that you don't belong. You need your gym buddies to hype you up. And there are times that I like to call every day where you audibly groan when getting up from your desk. You need your colleagues to tease you incessantly for it. So programming often feels like it's an individual sport. You know, you have your Jira ticket, you put on your noise-cancelling headphones, you might even work from home. It's just you and the keyboard. And I used to work like that, but what I found was that while I felt productive, keyboard catting away, my merge requests often came back with many comments, or testers flicked a ticket back saying it didn't meet the acceptance criteria. Or worse than that, I triggered a regression. And I learned that working like that all the time in isolation, as peaceful as it may be, is not the job. I mean, I love that part of the job, but it is not the job. Thankfully, in my team, we have very few meetings. I mean, we plan and we refine and we coordinate, but we keep it as streamlined as possible. My project manager largely handles the customer's feelings, which is handy because my main tool for managing feelings is tough love. I mean, it's a good and often effective tool, but it's also a crude one that is not usually appreciated. I also have my tech lead who gives us that technical dot on the horizon to work towards. I have as many obstacles as possible abstracted away from me. But I can only do my best work with and through others. And I need to be proactive in getting the help that I need. And it took me a while to find that balance between focus time and collaboration, between individual pursuit and teamwork. But here's what works for me. So asking for what I call a design consult. So I engage a colleague as a sparring partner for working through the best implementation given the current set of constraints. Because very rarely is there one way to implement something. So I take some time to think through the alternatives with someone else to properly weigh the costs and benefits before going too far in one direction. Asking for a sanity check, which is basically a question of, am I being pragmatic or am I just being lazy? Unfortunately, the perfect implementation doesn't exist. Every engineering decision carries trade-offs, but sometimes we might be tempted to give up too much in the future in order to make our lives easier today. And in these moments, it really helps to get a second opinion. Opinionated rubber ducking is another favorite of mine. What I mean by this is asking a colleague if they're okay to simply listen as I describe the issue and to act as a bit of a rubber duck. Communicating freely with a human like this gives me the clarity of rubber ducking, but it also gives me access to their experience. Now, I've said colleague here, but you could also ask a friend or family member to fulfill that role. That not only sharpens your skills in speaking to a non-technical audience, but you will often benefit from a wildly different perspective. And, you don't have to limit yourself to, asking for stuff. You can also, collaborate. The classics are classics for a reason, and by now, pair programming is a classic. And if you're not doing it at least some of the time, then you're missing out, because why use one brain to solve a problem when you can use two? Every big lift needs a spotter. Now, if pair programming seems too scary or impractical, although I would challenge you on that assumption, you can also try pair code reviewing. Now, this is basically where you walk through your merge request with the reviewer and you articulate your choices and reasoning. This not only saves time, especially for larger changes, it also avoids that robotic, glassy-eyed, looks good to me, review. Another strategy that I like is getting customer buy-in early. I have gotten in the habit of sharing a mock-up or a proof of concept with the customer as early as possible before embarking on a full implementation. Now, this approach might not work in every company or with every customer, but in my team, it's proven successful because it exposes any assumptions I have made that weren't fully refined away. And doing this early reduces the likelihood of rework and the associated costs of that. It also helps build trust with your customer and makes development more of a conversation rather than a ceremony of throwing requirements into the abyss. So it's these collaborative moments intertwined with individual focus time that has yielded the best results for me. Brute forcing my way to a solution with my own brain often takes twice as long once I factor in things that I've missed, incorrect assumptions that I've made, or just domain knowledge that I just don't have. Because even when you have a well-scoped ticket with your name on it, programming is still a team sport, and your ticket is not done until it's in production. So, before and after time, there's almost 3 years between these two videos, which I'll play for you in a second. If you told the Adele on the left that she would end up as the Adele on the right, she would not have believed you. She would have been overwhelmed. Like, how is this even possible? There's a saying in fitness that most people overestimate how much they can achieve in 6 weeks, but underestimate how much they can achieve in 6 months or 6 years. Because in 6 weeks, you can willpower your way through just about anything. Head down, get it done, even if you hate it. But willpower needs the promise of an enticing outcome. But often, though, in order for that outcome to be enticing enough, it needs to be unrealistic. Lose 15 kilos by the summer, add 20 kilos to your squat by winter, build a proof of concept and put it in production by the end of the month, work 12-hour days if you have to, and maybe you can willpower your way to the outcome in a short time, but what then? How do you maintain that weight loss or hopefully go about supporting hopefully a growing number of users? Because when you achieve something using unsustainable methods, then the outcome is going to be unmaintainable. Lasting and ongoing progress requires investment in the process, a shift from an outcome-driven mindset to a process-driven mindset. And when I say investment in the process, I'm not talking about financial investment, not entirely, at least. I'm talking about the mental investment of being engaged and curious and ultimately finding a way to experience joy in what you're doing. Powerlifting's great for this because it's literally an incremental numbers game. Now, of course, your body is not a machine, it's a biological system, so progress won't always be linear, but the incremental results add up over time. An extra rep here, an extra kilo there, add up to big gains in the long run. So how can you learn to enjoy yourself with a process-driven mindset? Now, a lot of goal-setting advice will say, start out with a meaningful goal or find your why. And that might work for things related to personal achievement, like being a national champion or being physically able to keep up with your kids and your grandkids. But let's be real with ourselves. Who actually cares about delivering on the multi-year technical roadmap? I doubt there are any kids out there telling their teacher about how they want to deliver on the technical roadmap when they grow up. Like, what if the goal is just doing better than you did yesterday, or better than you did last week, or leaving the project in a better condition than when you found it, to strive for excellence? You know, the roadmap might help you better measure objectively what better or excellent means in your role as a developer, but it doesn't have to fuel your flame. Getting better for the sake of getting better is actually a pretty zen way to go through your life and career. Because getting better for the sake of getting better can look like staying up to date on libraries and languages, There's nothing quite like a new language feature to put a spring in your step and give you that feeling of mastery as you refactor some older code to take advantage of it. Staying up to date is often framed as something that can help you improve security of your application and reduce risk. But taking advantage of new features can also improve the readability and maintainability of your app. Now, I'm not saying that you need to refactor your app on every major version release. What I am saying is that staying up to date can help you spot opportunities for improvement as you go about your regular work. Getting better can also look like taking some time to automate the boring stuff. And you might think that the primary reason for this is to save time in the future. But for me, the bigger win is ensuring that the task is done a consistent way, and the knock-on effects of that, such as reducing the likelihood of mistakes and rework. A well-written script can also serve as a source of documentation outlining the steps of what needs to be done to achieve a particular goal in your project's workflow. And at the very least, the script is much better than a procedure that just lives in someone's head. The next way to get better it could fall under the automation category, but I actually think it's worth mentioning separately, which is improving your builds and pipelines. And I want to mention it separately as the key thing I want you to take away is the benefits of making your builds faster. Faster builds often yield a quicker and more iterative workflow. Keeping your workflow as fast, as seamless as possible can help you stay in the zone as you work, and can free up some time for higher impact tasks, such as refactoring. Because every so often I find myself saying, F this, and I spend a day or half a day refactoring for no other reason than the code annoys me and enough is enough. I've touched it too many times in the last 6 months, and each time I do, I have to burn time going, what on earth is it doing? Only to introduce a regression anyway. And here is where I will apply another lesson I have learned from powerlifting, but I'll cover it in more detail in the next section, which is when it comes to refactoring, I'll happily play the long game. So each time I find a frustrating piece of code like this, I'll add tests and learn some more of the domain, with the faith that one day that beautiful moment will arrive where I can safely delete or simplify a bunch of logic and still see a sea of green. And one more example before we move on. Learning something that's not directly related to your work right now. So putting some effort into learning something that's only adjacent to your work can give you a more complete perspective when finding solutions later. So for example, some of the most helpful books I've read have been about habit forming, logical fallacies, and decision making. I read these books with the view to understanding my brain a little bit better and how I can work with it and not against it. Because as much as I hate to admit it, I have made many irrational and emotionally driven decisions in the past, and I will no doubt do it again in the future. One of my favorite books on this topic is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. This book helped me understand that what we perceive as instinct is often the result of experience. So decisions made from this position can be fast, but they're often not completely correct. But by giving our rational brain just a minute to catch up and process the information more completely, then we can end up making better decisions. So by learning a little bit more about how my brain processes information and makes decisions, I've become a much more compassionate and empathetic colleague, and I've become a much better engineer. Because for a book that's not about software engineering at all, I sure lean on it a hell of a lot when making engineering decisions. So if you haven't read this book on the left, I highly recommend it, along with The Art of Thinking Clearly by Rolf Dobelli. That book covers logical fallacies with examples in excellent detail. Now, it's a common trope in software development that you want to hire the lazy developer. as the lazy developer will find a more efficient way to do things. They'll automate the boring stuff and they'll take on ungodly amounts of work in the short run to avoid tedium in the long run. Now, in most other contexts, being lazy is perceived as a bad thing, but not in software development. I would argue that you could put impatience in a similar category, because as developers, we are used to being impatient. We want faster builds, we're hungry for new features, we race to implement the latest and greatest. Impatient developers will build it or improve it themselves rather than wait around for someone else to take action. And in the same way the lazy developer is applauded for making things more efficient, the impatient developer is applauded for making things better and faster. But just like laziness, impatience is a double-edged sword, because impatience can also look like diving into the code before fully understanding the requirements, or spending hours debugging rather than just taking a little bit of time to read the documentation. I mean, we've made it a meme for a reason, right? So, should we learn to be more patient then? Or at least better understand when to be patient and when not? Now, admittedly, I didn't fully understand the importance of patience in software development until I became more patient myself. And it was powerlifting that got me there. So here is a chart of my powerlifting strength gains. I've plotted all my personal record totals since I started powerlifting 4 years ago. And what you see here is a very typical trajectory. So in the first year or so of powerlifting, or general strength training for that matter, the gains come fast. The weight on the bar goes up almost every week, but that eventually stalls. And not because you've done anything wrong, it's just the nature of strength and muscle gains. I mean, beginner gains are a well-known phenomenon for a reason. And once your beginner gains slow down, powerlifting becomes a sport of patience. You learn that you can't force progress. You can only provide the right conditions to enable it. You learn that strength is an emergent property. So you hit the gym consistently, you listen to your coach, you watch your nutrition, your sleep, your recovery, and eventually the strength gains that you are craving will appear. Because as soon as you try to force progress, it stalls, or worse, you get injured. Strength comes on its own schedule, and you have no choice but to hit your controllables, be patient, and trust the process. Don't put more on the bar than what you are ready for. Putting too much on the bar is such a well-known behavior in powerlifting that we've given it a name, overshooting. Now look here, here's a screen grab for one of my own old programs. My coach literally writes, "No overshoots," because after several weeks, the message still hadn't sunk in, and I needed a reminder in black and white. So you can see here that it says RPE 7. RPE is the rate of perceived exertion out of 10. So you can think of RPE 7 like 70% effort or intensity. And at this point in my training, I was consistently hitting more like 80 or 90%. Now, of course, effort is a subjective measure, but it is something you get a feel for over time. Anyway, no overshoots is my coach reminding me to play the long game. 70% intensity was the goal in this phase of training. So why deliberately limit intensity like this? Well, because perhaps counterintuitively, most of your gains will actually come from sub-maximal effort, from the boring stuff, the sets that are only 50 to 80% intensity. This is not only the sweet spot for practicing the lift and refining our technique, it's where we build readiness to take on more serious weights at higher intensity later. Diving into the code before fully understanding the requirements is a form of overshooting. You're taking on the work before you are ready for it. A few minutes ago, I mentioned the long game refactor, where rather than rushing into refactoring something the first time you get frustrated with that "this code sucks" feeling, instead, you take your time. You commit to just adding some tests on your first pass. The tests not only reduce the risk of you or a colleague breaking something when touching that code in the future, writing them also helps you understand what the code actually does. And if you're relatively new on a project, it's entirely possible that you just don't understand the domain well enough in order to refactor it in a way that's an overall win for the project. You haven't built the required readiness. Pragmatic programmers Dave Thomas and Andrew Hunt would maybe caution us about broken windows, such as bad designs, wrong decisions, or poor code, which can lead to software rot over time. They have a section on broken window theory in their book, The Pragmatic Programmer, and if you haven't read it already, then I do highly recommend it. And while Dave and Andrew do caution us about broken windows in this book, they also make it clear that you don't need to fix every broken window right away. It's okay to board some of them up and to make a plan to address each one later. The key phrase here being, though, make a plan. That does not just mean shrugging your shoulders and then forgetting about it, but it's certainly okay to accept that you cannot fix everything at once and to prioritize accordingly. The system will never be perfect, but that doesn't mean that we give up on trying to make it better. And so far, I have focused on the influence of patience on the code itself, but I would hope that you would expect, cultivating patience can also help us as software developer humans. So for example, with your learning trajectory, staying patient with your learning trajectory has the potential to have a large impact on your sanity, especially given the current climate. There's a lot to learn in our industry, and the pace only seems to quicken. A friend of mine recently said, last month was a big year in AI. And you might feel like you need to learn it all and start building an MCP integration, MCP server integration as soon as possible. But it's also a valid strategy to just show a little patience and let the dust settle before making a huge time investment. You've decided to join me here at a conference today, so clearly you care about your craft. Give yourself a little grace. And when you do decide to go that level deeper and start learning something completely new, you don't have to expect to learn it all over the weekend. Anything worth having takes effort and consistency, and that includes knowledge and expertise. Patience can also help you become a more methodical debugger. It's easy to lose patience debugging, especially if it's a production issue. And for me, this urge gets stronger the more experienced I get, trying a whole bunch of random stuff from my toolbox, exclaiming, oh, it must be this, without giving myself the space to be more methodical. Patient debugging involves focused attention, eliminating possibilities one by one, rather than just randomly changing stuff and hoping you strike gold. But you have to give yourself permission to do it. Lastly, patience can bring harmony when communicating with your non-technical stakeholders, aka the business or aka users. I would hazard a guess that at some point in our careers, a lot of people in this room will be brought a long list of conflicting and unclear requirements. Like hands up if this has already happened to you. Long list, yeah? Okay, cool. So when this happens, our first instinct might be to say it's not possible, or worse, we just say yes to everything and then guess our way through the conflict resolution later on. And we can be pretty confident in saying how this would end. A better approach is to take the time to understand the why behind that list and tease out the stakeholders' motivations, which at least gives us a fighting chance of establishing clear acceptance criteria. And ironically, long lists of requirements can be the result of poor experiences with engineering in the past. The wrong thing has been delivered too many times, and the business is simply trying to regain control of a process that is opaque to them. But by being patient and genuinely curious, you can challenge your assumptions and theirs and hopefully move towards a list of requirements that's clear and well thought out. You might even build some trust in the process. How novel. And the last topic we're going to cover today is probably the one that's had the greatest impact on my life and consequentially in my performance as a software engineer. So I'm going to tell you another little story which captures exactly how this happened. So I have a love-hate relationship with squats in that I hate to love them. As much as I want us to get along, I'm just not built for squats. I don't have the proportions for them. Now, what do I mean like that? So let me give you a little refresher of high school physics for a second. One of the most important components of a good squat is maintaining your balance. So this means that we can get the maximum force transfer from our legs vertically through the bar. And in order for our expertly drawn stick figure to stay balanced, they need to keep the bar shown by the red circle here over their center of mass, their midfoot, for the entire lift. Now you can see in this drawing that the torso remains relatively upright. And if you're still not seeing it, let's add in a stick figure which has much longer upper legs. A lot more bent over, right? So having relatively short upper legs and a relatively long torso is advantageous for the squat as it enables you to keep a more upright position, which not only assists your balance, but keeps your strongest muscles loaded. Now, which figure do you think most closely represents me? Huh? The one on the left or the right? Okay. Yes, the one on the right. My body is the exact opposite in every metric that defines someone as being built for squatting. I have long upper legs and a very short torso. I am 99% femur. This also means that I have to lean my torso over a lot to keep the bar over the midfoot and therefore stay balanced. So when I'm squat, I'm quite folded, and if my hips come up too fast, there's a risk that the bar could roll onto my neck. And once I started squatting above my own body weight, shit started to get scary. My own body weight was kind of the threshold where I went, yep, this thing is bigger than me and it needs to be respected. So I developed this fear that if I couldn't make the lift for whatever reason, then I'd be crushed as I'm folded into myself. And sometimes I'm nervous for the whole day if I have to squat heavy in the evening. But I just keep showing up and squat the scary numbers anyway. Because the funny thing about squat anxiety, yeah, it's so common that it has a name, is that it doesn't go away. It merely evolves. The scary number simply increases. For me, it used to be 100 kilos. Now it's 130 kilos. And that increase isn't just the result of me getting stronger. I mean, I have gotten stronger, but I've also learned to manage the fear a little better. For example, I always use the safety bars or safeties, even on light sets. That allows me to just get out of my head and just focus on my body and the lift. I also make use of positive self-talk. That can be as simple as saying to myself, you can do this because you have done it. But the thing that helped me the most in managing my squat anxiety was failing a squat, this squat, and I'll play it for you in a second. This was the moment where I convinced my nervous system that failing was safe, that I wouldn't fold in half, that I wouldn't die. This failure changed everything for me. Now, I'm not advocating for you to drop a table in production, although I have actually done that. Technically, it was an index in elastic, but same. But what I am saying is to find the thing that scares you, that's holding you back, and to microdose it regularly. For example, if you struggle to speak up in a meeting, even when dumb decisions are being made, practice some key phrases until they are automatic. That sounds good, however, it's important to consider. I believe we discussed that last year and decided against it because of. Trying it out in a lower stakes environment first to build your confidence, such as during a small meeting or with your dog or with your cat, can help. Fear can also come from touching parts of the code base that are particularly scary. the parts that we loathe to touch because it's complex and inevitably leads to regressions. Microdose your fear by making a plan to refactor it. Write some tests, write some more tests, extract a method, give it a better name, run your test, delete some code, run your test again, put it in production, roll forward. Don't be afraid to make some mistakes. Just be smart in how you make them. Use the safeties. Now, do you remember at the start of this talk where I said, this man saved my life? I'm not kidding. I made a mistake on that 135 kilo lift, and I did let my hips shoot up too fast. He literally grabbed the bar the millisecond it started rolling forward onto my neck, and he and the other spotters assisted me with the lift. Now, I do apologize for the video quality here. This is the only version that I have. It's filmed on my coach's ancient smartphone. You can't see it too clearly, but this is the moment we happen. So, and the lift part is going to be in slow motion. So, we start the lift, and we descend okay, and then my hips start to rise a bit too fast, and then my shoulder and my head will go down, and just there, and he catches it. Life saved. So the fear that I have is actually completely valid, but through time and exposure, I have learned to trust the safeguards that I have in place as I work at getting stronger. Now, I will readily concede at this point that when we're thinking about our jobs as software developers, fear is probably too strong of a word. In reality, what we're feeling is probably more of a discomfort, and I think you can tell by the look here on my face that I'm rather uncomfortable. And in the specific context I'm talking about here, the effect of fear and discomfort is largely the same. It's something that we want to actively avoid, but in doing so, we stand in our way of getting stronger, both as individuals and as a team. So, what are some fears or discomforts that might be holding you back from getting stronger? I've shared 2 examples already, speaking in meetings and making changes to the scarier parts of the code base. I've got a few more, which I'll share with you now. But I encourage you to ask yourself this question, because you'll be able to pinpoint what scares you a hell of a lot better than what I can. But hopefully these examples assist you in your thinking. So first up, it can be very uncomfortable to say, I don't know. We don't want to be seen as stupid or unhelpful, and we might convince ourselves that admitting we don't know the answer will give the impression that we are just that. It might seem counterintuitive, but a sincere and thoughtful I don't know can actually build trust and respect. People around you learn that they can take you at your word. When you have the answer, you'll provide it, and when you don't, you'll admit it and work to find out. Getting comfortable responding with a thoughtful I don't know can be liberating, and you can start as small as you want. Like tell your colleague that you don't know why the coffee machine is making that sound. Next, it can be uncomfortable to openly share a current difficulty we're having in a team meeting or stand-up, because despite it being expected that we share our impediments or blockers at these times, it can be hard to expose our perceived ignorance to a group of people, no matter how long we've worked with them. We feel vulnerable. But by sharing in a group setting, we give ourselves the opportunity to benefit from the expertise of more people. Lastly, it can be very difficult to speak up about personal matters that are affecting our work. For example, if you're feeling overwhelmed by workload or experiencing issues at home, unfortunately, there is a widespread belief that persists that we should just suck it up and carry on. But sharing these difficulties means that you give you and your team a shot of coming up with a workable plan. Now, I want to make it super clear that I know that not every workplace is a safe space to do this, and that really sucks. And unfortunately, creating a safe work environment is beyond the scope of this talk. But speaking from my own experience, working in a team with good psychological safety, opening up when I needed to has saved me lots of stress and helped me get back on track much faster than I would have had I kept my problems to myself. I'm convinced that the path to excellence is paved by regular exposure to fear and discomfort. Because as you expose yourself to uncomfortable or fear-inducing situations and go, hey, that wasn't so bad, the fear and the apprehension will slowly start to melt away. You give yourself evidence that contradicts what your fear is telling you. And being smart and sometimes rational humans, that mounting evidence ends up convincing you that you can do hard things. Because once you believe that you can do hard things, like truly believe it, then you are unstoppable. So, let me quickly recap what we have covered today. One of my goals for this talk was actually to have you daydream a little bit here and there, to consider a point or an idea a bit more deeply. So if you've missed a couple of things because of that, that actually makes me very happy. So first, I made the case that individual pursuits still require teamwork. Even if there's a well-scoped ticket with your name on it, programming is a team sport, and it's up to you to find the support that you need. Second, most people overestimate what they can achieve in 6 weeks and underestimate what they can achieve in 6 months. You can go much further in the long run by focusing on the process rather than fixating on an outcome. Getting better for the sake of getting better is the goal. Third, patience is an underrated trait of the software developer. Our career is one of the most ultimate long games that we will ever play. It's okay to take a beat to figure out what matters and to make improvements, debug, or learn new things slowly and deliberately. The software is never done anyway. Lastly, find the things that scare you or make you uncomfortable and do them often in small doses. They will probably always make you feel a certain way, but you will be able to face them at a bigger magnitude. You never know, and I'm not sure that's the right approach in a team meeting might lead you to your defining moment of telling the CEO directly that what they've decided could be detrimental to the project and the company. And one final note before I close out, because I really want you to hear this. If you've ever labeled yourself as not good at sports, remember there's a big world full of amazing sports out there. You might just be rubbish at the popular ones. Don't be afraid to keep trying new things. It's never too late to start. My name is Adele, and thank you so much for your time. So we do have a little time for Q&A. I'm fine to do that, or you can just come up and ask your question or catch me out and about. Either's fine for me. So if there are any questions at this point? Nope. All right. Enjoy your little extra break time.